Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And today's video, I wanted to recommend 5 games for the Halloween season. So these are all the games that I've personally picked, that I've played and I beat, so I can give you my thoughts on it and why I think it's a good game to recommend for Halloween season. So I apologize, this video is a little late, but there's still enough time to get to play some of these games at least. Starting off, for my first recommendation will be Grim Fandango Remastered. This is a adventure game similar to other games like Day of Tentacle. It's almost like point and click adventure, but not really. It's more like exploration, you finding items to solve environmental puzzles to progress through the game and advance the story. In this game, you play as Manny Calavera. He's a travel agent for the Department of Death, and him being frustrated with his job, being forced into his job, and being threatened to be fired, he decides to steal a client from a coworker named Meche, short for Mercedes, and he's trying to help her get onto the right express train so she can go visit her family. And unfortunately, she gets screwed over, and she has to do a 4 day, like, what's the word for it? She has to like go on a 4 day journey. There you go. So she has to do that, but Manny knows that she was pure in her heart during her lifetime, so she deserves to get on the expressway and not do the 4 day journey. So you follow in his footsteps, trying to make it right and follow her and make sure she gets to where she needs to be. And this game takes place during the Day of the Dead, so it really is a Halloween game. So even though like this game is old school, it came out in the 90s. It was on PlayStation 1 and on PC, but it has been, as you saw, remastered for modern platforms. And if you really enjoy like Telltale games or point and click adventure games, I highly recommend you check this one out. It's definitely worth your time. And yeah, it was really a perfect game for Halloween. Like I mentioned before, it is available on all platforms: PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. Now, physical copies, I do believe, exist for the Switch, of course, and the PlayStation. I'm not sure about Xbox, but they are available on their digital storefronts if you are interested in the game. So that was Grim Fandango Remastered, the first recommendation. The second recommendation for this list is going to be Alien Isolation. So this is a survival horror game, as you can probably assume. So you play as Amanda Ripley, Ellen Ripley's daughter. This game takes place 15 years after the original film. Amanda Ripley gets notified that a recording of the Nostromo, Ellen Ripley's ship, survived and was recovered and is being held at a station called the Sevastopol, and she ends up being offered to be able to be on a team to go recover the recording footage. But once her and her team arrive at the station, they realize the whole station is pretty much in disarray and abandoned, and they soon realize that everyone is pretty much dead. The only thing that's left is a couple of survivors and, of course, androids. Now, soon enough, they find that they're all being stalked and hunted by the xenomorph. And in this game, you play in first person, and for a majority of the game, you fight androids and humans, but you end up hiding from the xenomorph because you can't do any damage to it directly at all. So you can only hide. And what's really cool about this game is that the xenomorph actually learns your patterns on how you hide, as well as if you have a mic plugged into your controller, it can actually hear you if you talk out loud. So that's pretty cool. Now, there are firearms in this game, and there's also melee weapons, but they're scarce given it's a survival horror game, and that kind of makes the game a little challenging, but not too challenging. It's pretty fair, but you also have to be mindful when you save, because when you save, the animation takes a little bit, so you can still get killed while you're trying to save. So you have to be wary of that and be wary of all your surroundings. Overall, this game is a very good survival horror game that will keep you on your toes and have your anxiety to the max throughout the entire game, especially if you wear headphones. So if that's something you're interested in and you can tolerate, depending on how much you can tolerate horror games, I highly recommend you check this one out. This game is also available on all platforms like Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, so you can choose on whichever platform you want and you'll be getting the same experience all across the board. So that was Alien Isolation. Next up on my recommendation list is going to be Fatal Frame: Black Maiden of Water. So this is another survival horror game where you play as three protagonists. You play as Yuri, Ren, and Miu, and all three of these characters have their own reasons to go onto the mountain called Hikami, and that mountain is known for suicides and paranormal activity, and they're trying to investigate on what's going on there. So a majority of the gameplay for this game is in third person, but when it comes to like combat, the combat is very unique, where you actually use an antique camera to take pictures of clues as well as take pictures of ghosts, because the ghosts are hostile towards you, and the only way to defend yourself is through that camera. So every time you take a picture of them, they kind of like freak out and fizzle out. So that's the only way to really defend yourself, and the more ghosts that are on screen when you take a picture, the more score you get. So that's the majority of what the gameplay is, and it's a really good game. I was very surprised. I didn't think I was going to actually like it, but I was pretty much at the edge of my seat the entire way through. It's very creepy, very dark, and the type of imagery you see is very disturbing, but very cool. And overall, it's a great game, and I highly recommend you check it out if you're interested in survival horror games with unique mechanics. I also like to mention this game is also available, I think, on all platforms. I'm not sure about Xbox, but I know it's available on PlayStation, Switch, and PC. The only one I'm not sure about is Xbox, like I mentioned. So you can check the Xbox Live Store to see if it's on there. But overall, I highly recommend you check it out. And that is Fatal Frame: Maiden of Blackwater, my third recommendation of this video. The fourth game I like to recommend to you guys is a very old game, but a very good game that still holds up in my opinion, and that is Condemned: Criminal Origins. So like I mentioned, this game actually came out on the Xbox 360, I think around launch or at launch. You play as Ethan Thomas, an FBI agent that's trying to catch a serial killer and is always getting away, so he's really on his tail. So pretty much this game is a first-person survival horror game where it's mostly focused on melee combat. There is firearms in this game, but they're not really the focus, so the ammo for these firearms are very scarce and very limited. So melee is really your only option to play this game, and surprisingly it's very good given that it is a launch title for the Xbox 360. And overall, this game's aesthetic and environments are very creepy, very detailed for a 2005 game. And the gameplay still holds up. It's a little stiff in some parts, but overall it's very playable, and it is backwards compatible on the Xbox Series X. That's how I played it. So I don't have the nostalgia like most people have that played this game back in the day. This is from a now perspective. So yeah, I think it's really good. I love the aesthetic. I love the story. It's all very well done. Still holds up. And if you are very much interested in this game, I highly recommend you check it out. Another game that's perfect for Halloween. Like I mentioned before, this game is backwards compatible on the Xbox Series X. And unfortunately, this game is exclusive to Xbox, that's on console, but it is available on PC. So you have that option if you have a PC, but if you don't, then Xbox is the only way to go. So the fourth game on the list that I recommended is Condemned: Criminal Origins. The final game I'm going to recommend to you guys is kind of cheating. It's two games in one, but it's all housed in one disc, and that's Resident Evil Origins Collection. So this game comes with Resident Evil 1 Remake and Resident Evil 0. So originally Resident Evil 1 Remake was developed for the GameCube, and even though it's a remake, it still retains the original Resident Evil gameplay style, where it's fixed camera angles. You know, you kind of aim towards the enemies the way the game intends to, so you don't really have that much control over aiming. So in this game, you play as either Jill or Chris, and they're investigating the Spencer Manor when they actually got crash landed from their helicopter and attacked by zombie dogs. So now they're trying to figure out what's going on and if there's anybody at the mansion, and they soon find out it is infested with zombies and other creatures. So there are differences between Jill and Chris in terms of what they do. So Jill is a lot more lightweight, she can carry more, and unfortunately she has a little less health than Chris. And Chris is, more of a tank. He can take more damage, but he unfortunately doesn't have as many inventory slots as Jill. So that's most of the major differences between the two. But as well as like the way the game not the game plays, but more like where you visit and how you visit the places are a little different. Some of the items that they keep during the beginning of the game are fixed to them as well, like the lighter, for instance. So I actually played this game in 2021, so I don't have the nostalgia that most people have playing this game back on the GameCube in 2001 or 2002, whenever it came out. So I was, very, it's been out for a really long time when I played it. And I still think it holds up, and I honestly think it doesn't need a remake similar to what we got with Resident Evil 2 and onward. I still think it's fine the way it is, it's perfect the way it is. But if it does get a remake, of course I'm going to welcome it with open arms. But I still think this game is worth experiencing if you've never experienced it before. It is classic survival horror at its finest, and is a classic game that I think everyone should play. Now, the biggest drawback to this game for most people is going to be the tank controls. There is a modernized control scheme available in the game, but even so, it's still a little janky. But I still believe that the jank is part of the game's charm and experience. So I still think, like, if you can get used to it, which it shouldn't take that long to get used to it, that it's actually worth playing. So yeah, if you like Resident Evil and you never played Resident Evil 1, this is probably the best way to play Resident Evil 1 with this remake. Now the other game in this collection is Resident Evil 0. And Resident Evil 0 is a prequel to the series and is unfortunately the black sheep of the franchise. Not a lot of people like Resident Evil 0, or at all really. They recommend you just skip it, but I honestly think that's a disservice to the game, because the game is actually pretty good in my opinion. So this game is probably the most unique game of the franchise from my experience. You play as both Rebecca Chambers and Billy. So Rebecca Chambers is a member of STARS that is investigating cannibalistic murders in the Arklay Mountains, and her helicopter crashes, and she and her team stumble upon express train that is, standstill, and they get on the train and they find out it's been infested with zombies. And she runs into Billy after all of her team dies, and now her and Billy are trying to survive. So like I mentioned before, you play as both of these characters, not at once, but in the same playthrough. You can switch between both characters on the fly, and because of that, you have to be mindful on where each character is, because if you leave them idle for too long, they can get attacked by a zombie or other creatures, and if one of them dies, it's a game over. So that really, to me, really like defines the survival and survival horror. It really makes you be on your toes and be alert at all times. And another unique feature to this game from the other games, there's no item box. You have to actually leave items on the floor if you want to make room for other stuff or key items. But the good thing about it is whatever you drop on the floor will remain there no matter what. No matter if you go to a different level or you transition to another room, it'll still be there and you can go back whenever you want to retrieve that item. For the most part, besides those differences from other entries to the franchise, it is very similar to Resident Evil Remake. The gameplay is pretty much exactly the same. You save the same. And overall, I think it's a game that is unfortunately hated on too much, and I don't think it deserves it. It's definitely a great game, and I'm very glad I actually gave it a chance. So if you are interested in playing a unique Resident Evil game that is different from the rest of the franchise, I highly recommend you check out Resident Evil Zero. I mean, it is included with this collection. So this game, along with Resident Evil 1 Remake, is available in the collection form physically and digitally, or you can actually purchase them individually if you really want to, if you don't want one or the other. And these games are available on all platforms. So that was Resident Evil Origins Collection. So that was the 5 games I wanted to recommend, plus one more since it was included with the collection. So I really hope you guys are interested in these games and really try these games out for Halloween, because I think these games are perfect for the season. Anyways, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.